You need to see this for yourself as the political poles move further apart in each direction. We're seeing clashes like the one you're about to watch even more important to break down. And you know why? Well, I think this conversation between David Pakman and Republican-endorsed Senate candidate Royce White reveals that there's a lot of house cleaning to do on either side before anyone can claim a moral or intellectual high ground. But here are some standout moments from this debate as it started to heat up, so watch this before I tell you more about it.
I will say that, it is my opinion, but I think even more so a fact that the left has weaponized identity politics in our current political culture, and that the identities of women, the LGBTQ, blacks, and Jews are all sort of used in a similar fashion to manufacture consent, that being an American citizen isn't so much that important anymore. And so
give me an example of that. Give me an example of that.
Well,
so let's just pick one of those, for example.
Well, let's take all four, because they're all four fruit from the same poisonous tree.
Well, but just so that it's clear to the audience, let's just pick one as an example to show kind of your line of reasoning. How has female identity been weaponized in order to show that being an American citizen isn't important?
Well, number one, the feminist movement and the women's rights movement have been clumped into a more global citizen-based ideology, that we are all one global citizenship, and the women's rights movement is at the helm of that, much by their own powerful organization, grassroots, not only here in the country, but all around the world.
If that were the case, though, Royce, and I'm just trying to understand this, I want this to be a conversation.
But wait a second. But what I'm saying is, and let me be even more specific.
Yeah.
The prevailing consensus around the women's rights movement and the feminist movement are ideas such as believe all women. That was popular with the Me Too movement. And then you have an even more pervasive idea that in general, and it's said casually, but it's said with a lot of emphasis and potency, let's say, that men are not useful, and that women are the women in their existence in this country politically right now today, but sort of all around the world, are nothing more than a byproduct of a tyrannical patriarchy. And by that definition, or by that thinking, that men are more so a hindrance on society and useless.
Who says that? Who says men aren't useful? Give me a name.
Now, I don't particularize this problem to any one group of people, because it's both identity politics from the left and the right that do great damage to the uniting umbrella of shared American ideals. And when Royce's names groups based on race and gender being used against an American first agenda, I think that's a misguided and potentially dangerous interpretation of something much larger, and that is a push toward globalization that is eroding the idea of national boundaries and national pride overall. By the way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more discussions like this. Now, sure, there's a whole host of cultural Marxist movements that are arguably taking the world in that direction, and it's that all the people that identify with the movement are part of some grand conspiracy. Maybe that's the point that Royce should really be making when confronted with someone like David Pakman, who's very much a man of the left and likely has presumptions for what Royce White is going to say.
That is, in my opinion, more than a valid reason to be able to say, hey, women are getting out of control. And I do think radical feminists are getting out of control. I should have been more specific, but
I get the
thought I was
point
being
that
humorous.
you think women are out of control. I got it.
No. I said radical feminists are out of control. Be clear. And they are. That's why they're bringing their children to drag stripper shows.
Let me ask about a couple of things.
Do you think that's okay? Do you think it's okay to sexualize children at drag stripper shows?
I don't think the children are being sexualized if they go to a drag show. No, I just don't think that that's the sexualization of children.
You don't think children are being, would it be okay for me as a grown adult male to take underage kids to a regular strip club?
I don't think they're allowed, no.
So why are they allowed to do it but why aren't they allowed?
Royce.
Why aren't they allowed? Is it because of the alcohol or because of the sexualization?
I don't know the laws around strip clubs. I couldn't tell you. But Royce, if
maybe you should learn them though, because you're talking about drag shows. You have an opinion about the drag shows, and you say that's completely fine.
Royce, you brought them up.
But you have an opinion about
I'm going to have to mute you, Royce.
Whether deliberately sexualized or not, no one can argue against the point that the whole idea of a drag show is to challenge conventional expectations of performative gender, dresses, and mannerisms. And even if you take the mild definition of the whole idea of drag shows for children, is very hard to spin in a way that makes it sound at all appropriate. That's because it's inherently meant to foist upon children a certain far-left interpretation of gender dynamics and introduce to children a gender confusion. Not to mention the content and storylines in Drag Queen Story Hour introduce the premise of gender as a fluid and performative concept to children, and there's more than enough instances of so-called family-friendly drag shows using suggestive comedy and mannerisms to make that point. Now, whether that's the same thing as an outright adult strip club is debatable, but the bar for when it becomes completely inappropriate for children lies much lower than that.
You brought up strip clubs. It was recently revealed you spent campaign donations at a strip club. Is that true?
That's not true.
Okay. It's been sourced very well by the Daily Beast. Where'd they get this information?
The Daily Beast, first of all, the Daily Beast is not a good source. That's number one. But number two, it wasn't well sourced even in that article at all. It was a reference to a campaign filing with the FEC that was not done properly.
Who didn't do the filing properly?
Whoever was in charge of the filing.
And who was that?
Well, there were a number of people, I would assume, who were in charge of getting that accounting done, but it wasn't.
You don't know who the people are doing your accounting?
Oh, yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I know who they are. Do you want me to list the entire list of people who worked on it?
Yeah.
So you have time for me to go through a list of people who worked on the filing, but you don't have time to talk about the details of the political issues you want to discuss?
Well, how many people is it?
Give me a break. Who do you people think you're fooling?
I don't think we're fooling anybody.
Who do you people think you're fooling?
So the people who prepared the reports.
I answered the question.
I'm trying to understand it, Royce. The people who prepared the reports.
The answer is no. The answer to your question is no.
I haven't even asked the question yet.
You did. You asked, did I spend campaign finance money on strippers?
And you responded, and now I want to ask a follow-up.
Okay.
Your claim is there were filings which said you spent campaign funds at a strip club, but they were incorrect filings.
No, they didn't say that I spent the funds at a strip club. Or no, let's say they didn't say that I spent the funds on strippers.
But it was spent at a strip club.
Well, strip club they sell food at the strip club, don't they?
So you've spent the money on food at a strip club. Is that more accurate?
You seem to be very unfamiliar with strippers and strip clubs and drag strip shows. So I'll inform you, maybe you aren't informed, that they do have food at strip clubs.
So what you're saying is the money was spent at a strip club.
No, wait, did you know that though? Did you know that?
I know strip clubs have restaurants.
Have you ever been to a strip club?
One time.
Did you like the food?
No.
You got to go to better strip clubs then.
Okay. But so what you're saying is you did spend the money at strip clubs, but on food. Is that right? Well,
I'm not saying that I spent the money. I'm saying that there was a filing on my FEC report that shouldn't have been there.
It's because you're so obviously lying.
Oh, okay. I'm so obviously lying?
Yeah, just tell me the truth. So did a staffer spend money on food at a strip club?
You white liberals have a lot of nerve.
That's identity politics.
You white liberals hate when black men vote Republican. You hate when black men say that they like being American citizens. You hate when black men say that we want to have a border. You hate when black men say stop sending our money to the Ukraine. And you go to the WWE politics to try and defend your latent racism. That's what it is.
Hold on a second, Royce. Aren't you against identity politics?
Absolutely.
So what are you talking about white liberals for, especially when
what do you mean?
I'm a Hispanic Jewish immigrant from Argentina?
Yeah, right, but you have a white liberal ideology. That's what's funny about it.
Oh, that's something different.
That's where someone like Royce White starts to lose me. You can't engage in the same ideas and vocabulary that you're criticizing others for and adding a racial prefix to an ideology. That's a very dangerous thing to do, as a history shows. There's a rule of thumb that you can employ in a question like this, which is to reverse the race or gender, see if it sounds remotely okay, then you'll realize that it doesn't, which is why it's never a good look to go down that road in the first place. Now, on the larger accusation of Royce White apparently visiting a strip club from campaign finance back in 2022, as of right now, it's very important to know that these are still legally defined as allegations, since there's no final word that's been reached yet by any relevant body. And even though the matter is more interesting from the point of view of a campaign finance law rather than him visiting a strip club in private capacity, he didn't really do a stellar job at dispelling the accusation. We'll have to wait how that turns out, because the original complaint letter was filed by the Campaign Legal Center, which is a nonprofit organization that works to ensure fair use of campaign finances in an election cycle. The letter reads in part, and I quote, Royce White, a 2022 congressional candidate who is now running for the U.S. Senate in Minnesota, appears to be unlawfully failing to report his Senate campaign committee's disbursements after previously using his 2022 campaign to illegally pay over $157,000 in personal expenses, including thousands of dollars in checks, wire transfers, and cash withdrawals, as well as payments for clothing, cosmetics, jewelry, fitness clubs, resort changes, and even strip clubs and nightclubs. That's all we know right now in this particular case, but when you look at the larger record for someone like Royce White, who has some other problematic allegations in the past of domestic assault, which were dismissed, and some allegedly Semitic remarks about a special lobby in the US working as a linchpin of the New World Order, Royce is hardly a good candidate for fielding the ideas that he stands for, especially not on a show like David Pakman, who's more than willing to use his image to bolster a partisan political talking point.